Hello. Today we will work on Class 1 Conventional Cavity Design on tooth number 47, Mandibular Second Molar. Before we start the tooth preparation, we have to review the anatomy and morphology of mandibular second molar. In this picture, you will be able to see that the mandibular second molar has two buccal cusps, the mesiobuccal and the distobuccal cusp, and the mesiolingual and the distolingual cusp. So two buccal cusps and two lingual cusps, total of four. And then you have here the mesial triangular fossa and the distal triangular fossa. You have to remember, when working on the tooth, you always start the tooth prep on the pit area. So either you start on the mesial pit area or the distal pit or the central pit. Okay. So what burr are you going to use? According to Sturdivant's Art and Science of Operative Dentistry, you use a short pear-shaped burr. It's either 329 or 330 burr. After knowing the anatomy of the tooth, we can now start with the preparation. Remember, for every cusp that you have, you will have one mountain. 1, 2, 3, and 4. That is to protect the cusp. The cusp is a stress-bearing area during mastication. So here we have 4 cusps, so you have 4 mountains. I just call it mountains, no, for it so that it's easier to remember. Then here in the mesial pit and distal pit area, you will form the dovetail. Dovetail. Okay. So initially, that's how your preparation would look like. Okay. Let us move on. Let's clear this drawing. And then let's have a mental image of your preparation. So ganyan na siya. So here, this is your buccal wall. Remember? And this is your lingual wall. This is your mesial wall. And this is your distal wall. Remember, we reviewed the walls, line angles, and point angles. For this preparation, the buccal and lingual wall should be slightly convergent towards the occlusal. Again, the buccal and lingual walls should be slightly convergent towards the occlusal. When you talk about convergence, that means it's, in layman's term, it's getting narrow. Okay? So, for example, here, this is your buccal wall. This is your lingual wall. This is your pulpal. Okay, this is your outer surface. So it's slightly convergent. It gets wider near the pulpal floor area, and it gets narrower near the occlusal area. So we describe this as converging towards the occlusal. Okay? So this portion, the buccal and lingual walls will be converging towards the occlusal. However, the mesial and distal walls, baliktad, will be diverging towards the occlusal. So when I make a drawing, when you diverge, it opens up a little bit. So mesial and distal wall. This is pulpal again. This is outer surface. Okay. The convergence of your buccal and lingual wall should be equal or less than 10 degrees. The divergence of your mesial and distal walls should just be around 2 to 5 degrees. Why is that so? Remember, in the triangles of decay, pit and fissure caries smaller on the outer portion, it gets larger towards the DEJ. So that's what we follow in the preparation of your Class 1 conventional cavity design. Again, buccal and lingual walls converging towards the occlusal, getting smaller towards the occlusal. Mesial and distal walls diverging towards the occlusal. Now, how deep should your pulpal floor be? From the cava surface margin, should be 1.5 to 2 millimeters. Again, from the cava surface margin, 1.5 to 2 millimeters. Okay, so that will be for the depth of your pulpal floor. The pulpal floor should be smooth and flat. Okay. For the walls to be convergent, you may use your inverted cone burr. Inverted cone burr and for the mesial and distal walls, you may use your short tapered fissure burr. Okay. So again, you start your preparation using your pear-shaped burr. After creating the outline, the shape, you may already make the convergence of the buccal and lingual walls and proceed to the divergence of the mesial and distal walls. Okay. Here, in this outline form, in this shape, we call this side the dovetail. This one, dovetail. Dovetail, because it resembles the tail of a dove. It's important that your dovetail is parallel to the proximal surface of the tooth. Parallel to the proximal surface of the tooth. Your marginal ridge should have a uniform depth of 1.5 to 2 millimeters. 1.5 to 2 millimeters for molars. To prevent fracture of the tooth or stress during mastication. And then, so you have the dovetail. Now you have the isthmus. The isthmus is the narrowest portion of your preparation. The narrowest portion of your preparation is the isthmus. Approximately, your isthmus is 1/4 of the intercuspal distance. Your dovetail is 1/3 of the intercuspal distance. So what is intercuspal distance? From the cusp tip of your buccal cusp and the cusp tip of your lingual cusp, you draw an imaginary line just on your head. For the dovetail, divide by 3. Or something like that. For the isthmus, divide by 4. So approximately 1/3 of the intercuspal distance is approximately 2 millimeters. And 1/4 of the intercuspal distance is approximately 1 millimeter. Okay. Then, we go to the buccal extension. So you have here the buccal extension and the lingual extension. Okay. So if your isthmus is around 1 millimeter, your buccal extension from here will also be 1 millimeter. Your lingual extension will be 1 millimeter. So itong tatlo, pag ganon, is approximately 3 millimeters. Because the buccal extension of the mandibular second molar and the lingual extension are on the opposite direction. Halos magkatapat sila. So parang letter T. Okay? So how do we check your cavity? How do we check your cavity? Let me just erase this one. We check your cavity if all pits and major developmental grooves are included, the preparation is centered on the tooth. Centered ba? O baka masyadong malapit sa bakal, masyadong malapit sa lingual. The presence of graceful curves. Graceful ba yung curves? Meron bang mga uka-uka? May matulis-matulis. Lateral extensions are correctly placed, the buccal and lingual extension. Mesial and distal walls follow the crest of the marginal ridge. Then the pulpal floor is flat and smooth, which is 1.5 to 2 millimeters from the cavosurface margin. Pulpal floor is flat and smooth and perpendicular to the long axis of the tooth. Isthmus width is 1/4 of the intercuspal distance, or 1 millimeter. Dovetail is 1/3 of the intercuspal distance, or 2 millimeters. Presence of mesial and distal dovetail. Buccal and lingual walls are slightly convergent occlusally, so you will not be able to see the bucco-pulpal and lingo-pulpal line angle from the occlusal part. The mesial and distal walls slightly divergent, so you will be able to see the distopulpal and the mesiopulpal line angle. Then enamel walls and cavity margins are smooth. Cavity preparation is clean and moisture-free. And preparation outline is rounded without sharp line angles. The secret to a nice typodont preparation is by the use of your hand-cutting instruments. After using your burrs, make sure to smoothen your floors and walls and line angles with your hand-cutting instruments. Good luck, and thank you for listening.